Today I will tell you the story of a 25-year-old man who thought he could rule everyone with anger until one powerful mother decided to transform his entire life. This journey changed his heart, his identity, and the way he saw himself forever. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Evan, 25 years old, living alone in a small rented apartment above a closed-down hardware store. People whispered that he was nothing but trouble. He carried himself like he owned every sidewalk, every corner, every person who dared to look at him wrong. If someone bumped his shoulder, he snapped. If someone asked him to calm down, he shouted louder. If someone tried to reason with him, he laughed in their face. He liked being feared. He liked being the loudest voice in any room. He liked pretending he was the boss, even though deep down he barely had a life worth defending. No family, no friends, no one who would miss him if he disappeared. Anger was the only thing he knew how to use to protect himself. That afternoon, the sun was beating down on the street outside the coffee shop where he liked to sit and stare people down. The moment Chloe stepped out of her car, Evan noticed her. She was well-dressed, confident, and clearly from money, the kind of girl he liked to bother just to prove he could. She walked past him toward the door. He threw his voice at her without hesitation. "Were you going in such a hurry, princess?" She froze.
He smirked.
He loved when people got nervous around him. "Relax. I'm asking a question." People nearby started watching. Chloe tried to ignore him and keep walking, but he stepped in front of her. "You think you're too good to talk to normal people?" His voice was loud. Too loud. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. She pushed past him and stumbled into the shop, shaking. Evan laughed to himself, as if humiliating her had been some kind of victory. He walked away like he had done nothing wrong. But the world did not let this moment go quietly. Chloe cried the entire drive back home. Her mother, Mrs. Hamilton, noticed the moment the front door opened. She was a calm woman, the kind who did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her presence alone could silence a room. She had built companies, charities, and networks of influence across the state. When she asked a question, people answered. Chloe told her everything, her voice shaking, her face red, her pride crushed. Mrs. Hamilton listened closely, her anger simmering behind steady eyes. She did not comfort gently the way most mothers would. Instead, she went still, focused, determined. "Who did this?" Chloe whispered Evan's name. Mrs. Hamilton started making calls. Within an hour, she knew everything. The fights, the outbursts, the history of small charges, the damaged property, the way he lived alone with no family and no guidance. People said he was a bad seed, a danger, a ticking time bomb. Mrs. Hamilton did not see a villain. She saw a broken boy who had never learned how to be human. And she made a quiet decision that would change his entire life. This boy needs a lesson he will never forget. And she had the power to give it to him. Mrs. Hamilton did not waste time. The moment Chloe finished explaining, she contacted her attorney, then the police chief, then a judge she knew from charity events. Not to manipulate the system, but to make sure Chloe's complaint was taken seriously. Within hours, a harassment charge was filed and a warrant was approved. While Evan lounged on his couch that evening, half asleep with the television buzzing in the background, the pounding on his door shook the entire apartment. "Evan Winters, open the door." He jolted upright. "What now?" He swung the door open, only to find two officers standing there with stern faces. "You're under arrest for harassment." Before he could say a word, they grabbed his wrists and snapped the cuffs on. He cursed,
Kicked.
tried to pull away like he always did when someone challenged him. But this time, the officers did not back down. They dragged him through the hallway, past neighbors peeking through cracked doors, watching the tough guy get hauled out like a criminal. At the station, they took his fingerprints, his photo, his shoelaces, and the last bit of pride he had left. Then they threw him into a cold cell. The metal bars clanged shut with a sound that cut straight through his ego. He sat on the bench, staring at the wall, acting like he didn't care, like nothing scared him, like he had been here before. But as the hours passed and no one came for him, the truth settled heavy in his chest. He had no one to call. No family to bail him out. No friend who would care. No one who would even notice he was gone. For the first time in a long time, he felt small. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just alone. Night fell, and he was still sitting there, trying to stay angry because anger was the only shield he had ever known. But anger could not warm the cold cell or silence the fear creeping into his bones. He expected the next face he'd see would be another officer. Or maybe no one at all until morning. He did not expect her. Mrs. Hamilton stood on the other side of the bars, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. Chloe stood beside her, clutching her purse, eyes still red from crying. Evan stared at them like he was seeing ghosts. Mrs. Hamilton's voice was steady. "You humiliated my daughter today." Evan swallowed hard, trying to smirk, trying to act tough. "So what?" Mrs. Hamilton tilted her head a little, studying him like he was a puzzle piece that had never fit anywhere. "You think you are strong, but I see a boy who has never been taught anything. Not respect. Not self-control. Not empathy. Nothing." Evan felt heat rising in his face, but he stayed silent. She continued, "You have two choices, and you'll choose tonight." Chloe stepped closer, her voice shaky. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Mrs. Hamilton nodded. "Choice 1, stay in jail. With the charges I filed, you could be here for a very, very long time." Evan felt his stomach twist. "Choice 2, she said softly. Enter my 1-year reformation program." He frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" Mrs. Hamilton looked directly into his eyes. "It means I take control of your life until you learn how to treat people like a human being. You follow my rules. All of them. Every day for 1 full year." Evan's chest tightened. She finished calmly. "Those are your only options. Prison or me." The hallway went silent. Even Evan didn't know which choice terrified him more. Evan didn't even pretend to think about it. Anything felt better than sitting in that cold cell with no one in the world who cared whether he lived or died. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll take your program. How hard can it be?" Mrs. Hamilton did not smile. She simply nodded once, as if she had already predicted his answer. An officer unlocked the cell and escorted him to a small conference room. When the door opened, Evan saw a thick folder sitting neatly on the table. The cover said Reform Agreement in bold letters. Mrs. Hamilton sat on one side of the table, her hands folded, calm and patient. Chloe sat beside her, watching him carefully. Evan dropped into the chair across from them. Mrs. Hamilton slid the folder toward him. "Inside this is the full outline of your program, behavioral expectations, daily schedules, emotional discipline training, accountability exercises, everything you must follow for 1 year." He flipped a few pages, saw long paragraphs, charts, morning routines, rules, rules, rules. His eyes glazed over instantly. He closed the folder. "Look, lady, I get it. You want me to be nicer? I can fake that for a year." Mrs. Hamilton lifted one brow. "This is not about faking anything. The goal is to reshape you into someone who is safe for society. That requires structure." Chloe whispered softly, "Mom, maybe ease him into it." Evan rolled his eyes. "Reshape me? You say that like I'm some project." Mrs. Hamilton kept her voice steady. "Right now you are headed toward a life of violence and isolation, and you have no one, not a single person to pull you back. So yes, I will reshape you, and you are going to let me." He clenched his jaw. The worst part was knowing she was right. Mrs. Hamilton slid a small card across the table. "These are your daily supplements. You have untreated anger issues, a chemical imbalance. These vitamins will help stabilize your emotions so you can learn properly." Evan barely glanced at the card. "Whatever. Pills are pills." Mrs. Hamilton's tone stayed gentle. "Not pills. Daily shots. My medical staff will administer them every morning." Evan looked up sharply. "Shots?" She nodded. "To help you stay calm. To reduce aggression. You want to change, do you not?" He hesitated just long enough for Chloe to notice the fear flicker across his face. Then he shoved it back down. "Sure. Fine. Whatever it takes to get out of here." Mrs. Hamilton pushed a pen toward him. "Then sign all pages." He did not read anything, not one line. He signed every page quickly, desperate to leave the cell behind, desperate to breathe air that was not filtered through metal bars. When the last signature landed on paper, Mrs. Hamilton closed the folder with a soft click. It was the sound of a door closing behind him, a quiet moment that marked the end of his old life, though he had no idea yet. Chloe stood up and said gently, "We leave now." Police escorted Evan out a back door, avoiding reporters who had gathered near the front after word of his arrest spread. A black SUV waited in the lot. Mrs. Hamilton opened the door for him herself. "Get in," she said, her tone offering no room to argue. The ride was silent until they reached her property. Evan had expected a normal house, maybe a mansion. What he did not expect was a separate guest house tucked beside a garden, surrounded by tall fences and a locked gate. It looked peaceful, but something about it felt controlled, designed, intentional. Mrs. Hamilton led him inside. "This is your home for the next year. You will not leave without permission. You will wake, sleep, eat, and learn according to the schedule inside the contract you signed." Evan scanned the space. It was clean, organized, and strangely warm. A bed, a small desk, a dresser. Soft lighting. Not a prison, but not freedom either. Mrs. Hamilton stepped back toward the door. "Your real work begins tomorrow morning. Rest while you can." The lock clicked behind her. Evan stood alone in the quiet room, unaware that the first shot he'd receive in the morning would begin changing him in ways he never imagined. Evan woke up early the next morning to the sound of a gentle knock. When he opened the door, a woman in a white medical coat stepped inside, holding a tray of small vials and a syringe. "Good morning, Evan. Time for your daily vitamin shot." He rubbed his eyes. "Already?" She smiled politely. "These support emotional control. Mrs. Hamilton wants you stable and calm while you learn." He rolled his eyes, but offered his arm, pretending none of this bothered him. The needle pinched, then warmth spread through his veins. He shrugged it off and went back to bed, not realizing the shot was nothing like vitamins. By noon, the world felt strangely soft. His usual anger sat somewhere far away, like a heavy object submerged in water. Everything felt muted, quiet, almost peaceful. Lunch arrived in a neat container. When he sat down to eat, he caught himself staring at his hands. His skin looked different. Not much, but a little smoother, like someone had applied lotion without telling him. Weird. Later, while scrolling through channels, he felt his eyes sting during a commercial where a father hugged his daughter. He blinked hard and shook his head. "What is wrong with me?" That night, he dreamed for the first time in years. Dreams with soft colors, flowing fabric, warm light, strange dreams, but not scary. Comforting. When he woke, he felt embarrassed by how peaceful they were. During breakfast, Mrs. Hamilton walked into the small kitchen area with her usual calm expression. "How are you adjusting, Evan?" He shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "Just tired, and these shots are kind of messing with me." She sat down across from him. "When we correct male emotional imbalance, you may feel things more deeply, but that is good. That means your walls are lowering." Male emotional imbalance. He hated how official she made it sound, but he also did not want to admit he had noticed something was happening. She stood and opened the dresser drawer near the bed. "Speaking of balance, we need to adjust your clothing." He frowned. "What's wrong with what I wear?" Aggressive colors trigger aggressive responses. "Evan, you need a calmer palette. Nothing harsh. Nothing that makes your mind restless." She pulled out a stack of soft t-shirts, pastel colors, light blues, pale greens, gentle fabrics that felt almost silky when she placed them on the bed. Evan blinked. "I'm not wearing that." Mrs. Hamilton did not raise her voice. "For this program to work, your environment and appearance must reflect peace. You will dress in what I provide." He opened his mouth to argue, but the moment he touched the fabric, something surprising happened. It felt good, comforting, warm against his skin. He hated that he liked it. He hated that he felt calmer just looking at the soft colors. Mrs. Hamilton continued, "You have lived in chaos for years. Your clothes were an extension of that. Now, They will be an extension of something new. He swallowed hard. This is stupid. But when she left the room, he lifted one of the shirts and held it against himself. He felt something loosen inside him. Something he had never admitted he wanted. Something he could not name yet. That night, he slipped into one of the soft shirts. It felt strange, but also right. The hormones were already working silently inside him. So was she. Evan thought the soft clothing was the worst of it. He was wrong. The next morning, 2 women walked into the guest house carrying clipboards. Mrs. Hamilton introduced them as her personal assistants, but their expressions made it clear they were more like instructors. Evan, today your training begins. Training. The word made him tense. They started with simple things. Stand straight. Lower your shoulders. Walk softer. Stop dragging your feet. Speak clearly. No shouting. No snapping. Everything he was used to doing without thinking suddenly became a lesson he was failing. One assistant circled him like a coach correcting an athlete. Lift your chin. Maintain eye contact. Say please and thank you. Slow your breathing. Evan gritted his teeth. I'm not a child. The woman didn't even flinch. If you act like one, we correct you like one. That stung more than it should have. Every time he reacted badly, he got a new exercise. When he rolled his eyes, they made him practice soft footsteps down the hallway until he could move silently. When he muttered under his breath, they taught him to speak politely, repeating phrases until they sounded natural. When he crossed his arms or clenched his jaw, they made him hold a book balanced on his head to correct his posture. He hated every second of it. But the hormones working quietly in his system made something unexpected happen. Instead of exploding, his anger softened, dissolving into confusion he didn't know how to handle. For the first time in his life, anger wasn't the quickest emotion to rise. Something else was, an odd vulnerability he couldn't shake. One afternoon, after an especially tense session, they told him to stand in front of the mirror. Look at yourself. See how you hold your body. He did. And for a moment, he didn't recognize the person staring back. His shoulders weren't as broad as he remembered. His skin looked smoother. The soft shirt he wore draped over him gently instead of clinging to tension. He frowned and leaned closer. Something was changing. Something inside him, and something outside, too. He didn't know what to call it yet. One assistant stepped behind him and adjusted the collar of his shirt. Humility looks good on you, Evan. He swallowed hard, staring at the reflection he barely recognized. It was the first time he felt a strange pull in his chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something much softer, something he couldn't explain, something that made him wonder what Mrs. Hamilton really had planned for him. Evan woke up feeling strangely warm, the kind of warmth that stayed in the body even after the blankets were pushed aside. He stretched, groggy from another vivid dream filled with soft colors and flowing shapes he didn't want to admit he found comforting. He opened his dresser to grab the usual soft shirt Mrs. Hamilton had assigned and froze. All his clothes were gone. In their place sat neatly folded feminine underclothes in gentle colors: soft peach, light lavender, pale cream. The fabrics looked delicate, light enough to disappear against his skin if he touched them. His heart slammed against his ribs. What is this? Where are my clothes? The door opened quietly, and Mrs. Hamilton stepped inside, as if she had been expecting the moment. Good morning, Evan. He pointed at the drawer. What is this supposed to mean? She didn't back down. Her voice stayed calm, almost gentle. If you want the world to treat you gently, you must learn to be gentle. And that begins with what you wear each day. His jaw clenched. I'm not wearing this. Mrs. Hamilton folded her arms unshaken. This is obedience training. Clothing affects mindset. Harsh fabrics create harsh reactions. Soft fabrics encourage soft behavior. Evan felt his chest tighten. I'm not wearing that. She stepped closer. Evan, you signed a contract. You agreed to every rule. You chose this path. I am guiding you into becoming safer for society and safer for yourself. These are your clothes now. He looked back at the drawer. The colors, the softness, the delicate stitching. Everything in him said no. But everything inside his body felt something else too, a warmth, a hesitation, a strange curiosity tightening behind his ribs. He grabbed the top item, meaning to throw it across the room. But when his fingers closed around the fabric, his cheeks flushed. It was unbelievably soft. Completely different from anything he had worn before. Mrs. Hamilton watched the shift in his face, but didn't comment. In the closet, the rest of the clothes have changed too. Soft tops, fitted lounge pants, pastel sweaters. Clothing designed to rest gently against your changing skin. "You will wear these," she said, "every day starting now." Evan felt a mix of humiliation and something much harder to admit, relief. Like part of him was tired of fighting everything all the time. When she left the room, he stood there alone, staring at the new clothes. The hormones were making him feel things he wasn't prepared for. Emotions rising faster and stronger each day. He changed. The fabric hugged him softly in places he wasn't used to. The fitted bottoms shaped around his hips in a way that made him swallow hard. His skin prickled with a strange, unfamiliar comfort. He walked to the mirror and froze. The person looking back wasn't the monster the neighborhood had known. His skin looked softer. His face less sharp. His posture calmer in the pastel colors. He looked gentler. He stared longer than he meant to. Then longer still. A heat curled in his stomach. Not anger. Not shame. Something tender. Something he didn't know the name for. He touched the hem of the top lightly, watching how it fell on his changing body. He hated that he couldn't look away. He hated that part of him didn't want to. And for the first time, he wondered if Mrs. Hamilton knew him better than he knew himself. Evan thought he could get through the day without anyone noticing the new clothes Mrs. Hamilton forced on him. The soft top, the fitted bottoms, the pastel colors that made him feel exposed and calm at the same time. He kept his head down, hoping no one would comment. But Chloe noticed instantly. She walked into the training room holding a stack of papers, glanced at him once, and her eyebrows lifted. "Wow," she said slowly. "You look different today." Evan stiffened. "Shut up." She smirked, not meanly, just amused. "Relax. I'm just saying hi. Or should I say hi, Eva?" He jerked his head up. "What? No. Absolutely not." Chloe laughed softly. "I'm kidding, but it fits, you know. Soft clothes. Soft voice. Soft everything." Heat crawled up Evan's neck. "I'm not soft." Mrs. Hamilton stepped into the room right then, her timing so perfect it almost felt planned. "Actually, Chloe might be onto something," she said calmly. "A gentle name helps reinforce a gentle mindset. Eva is short, simple, and fitting for the new behavior we are developing." Evan's chest tightened. "Do not start calling me that." "I'm not answering to that." Mrs. Hamilton raised a brow. "Names shape behavior. Behavior shapes identity. For training purposes, you will respond to Eva when addressed." He opened his mouth to argue, but the moment he did, he felt something odd twist inside him. The hormones had been messing with him for days. His emotions didn't explode like they used to. His reactions softened before he could stop them. When Mrs. Hamilton said, "Eva, come sit," his body moved before his pride could catch up. He sat. Chloe covered a smile with her hand. "See? It suits you." Evan glared at her, but the glare lacked its usual bite. His chest felt too warm. His eyes too sensitive. Every protest fell apart before it reached his mouth. That afternoon, while practicing his etiquette lessons, one of the assistants said gently, "Eva, straighten your shoulders." He startled. "That is not my name." She smiled. "Maybe not yet, but you respond to it well." Evan didn't argue. He couldn't. Something about the name slid under his skin quietly, like a soft breeze he couldn't block out. Later in the bathroom, he stared at his reflection again. The pastel top, the smooth skin, the calmer eyes, the subtle curve starting at his hips, the vulnerability creeping into his expression. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "I am not Eva." But the way his chest tightened at the sound, he wasn't sure if he believed himself anymore. By evening, Mrs. Hamilton said it again while handing him his dinner tray. "Here you go, Eva." He flinched less this time. Almost not at all. And somewhere deep inside, a part of him felt the door crack open, just enough for the name to slip in. Eva. He hated it. And yet, it was getting harder and harder to imagine himself without it. Evan expected the next phase of training to be more posture drills or more quiet repetitions of polite phrases. Instead, he walked into the training room one morning and found a full vanity table set up. Lights around the mirror. Brushes. Creams. Small bottles lined up neatly in rows. He stared at it. What is all this? Mrs. Hamilton nodded toward the chair. Today you begin concentration training. Concentration training. He almost laughed. Chloe stepped in behind him with a grin. Relax. It's not what you think. Well, maybe a little. One of the assistants guided him toward the vanity. Sit, Eva. This requires focus. He bristled at the name, but his body obeyed before he could push back. He sat. The assistant held up a small brush. Learning makeup is not about beauty. It is about patience, discipline, and calm hands. If you rush, it smudges. If you panic, it streaks. If you're careless, it shows. Evan tried to scoff, but the hormones had been making his emotions shift in strange ways. Even the soft light around the mirror made him feel warm. Fine, he muttered. Let's get this over with. They began with skincare. Gentle cleanser. Soft cloth. Moisturizer rubbed into his skin with slow circular motions. His eyes fluttered shut on instinct, and he hated how good it felt. Next, they moved to posture. They made him sit with his back straight, shoulders low, chin lifted. Every small adjustment made him feel more composed, more balanced. When they finally put a brush in his hand, he stared at it like it was a foreign object. Steady hands, Eva, the assistant said softly. Breathe. He followed her directions, surprising himself. The brush moved across his eyelid with a light stroke. Then another. It felt delicate, almost soothing. His heartbeat slowed. The hormones were doing their silent work, making his reactions softer, his spirit quieter, his movements more careful. Everything about this process felt unnervingly natural, like he had been waiting his entire life for someone to show him how to slow down. When they curled his hair slightly with a warm brush, he felt a strange flutter in his chest. Not embarrassment, not fear. Comfort. A softness he couldn't name. He caught himself relaxing into the chair, closing his eyes as the assistant styled the front pieces to frame his face. The gentle tug. The warmth. The way it made him feel cared for. And when they finally stepped back and said, Open your eyes, Eva. He did. For a long moment he forgot to breathe. The face in the mirror wasn't a woman yet. Wasn't even trying to be. But it was the Evan he had always known. The harsh lines looked softer. The eyes looked deeper. The light makeup highlighted features he had never paid attention to. His hair had a gentle shape around his face. He looked calmer, more put together, more right. He leaned closer, trying to understand why his stomach felt warm, why his chest felt light, why his throat tightened with something close to longing. The assistant whispered, You see it, don't you? He swallowed hard. I don't know. But he did know. Somewhere deep inside, a door was opening. A hidden room he had never dared enter. A softness he had never let himself feel. His reflection didn't feel wrong. It felt like something inside him had been waiting for this moment. He caught himself liking it. Liking himself. He jerked back slightly, unsettled by the truth sliding quietly into his heart. Mrs. Hamilton watched him from the doorway. Her voice calm, predictable, knowing. Transformation begins with seeing Eva. Once you see yourself clearly, the rest follows. Evan looked at the mirror again, and for the first time, he didn't look away. The months passed slowly, each day shifting Evan in small, quiet ways he didn't fully understand. The etiquette lessons, the soft clothes, the posture corrections, the makeup practice, the daily vitamin shots that seemed to change the entire rhythm of his emotions. He fought it at first. Then he resisted less. Then he stopped resisting without even realizing it. One morning, after another long session at the vanity, he stared at himself in the mirror and felt something inside him tighten. He didn't recognize the old version of himself anymore. The anger that used to boil so fast seemed distant, like it belonged to someone else. His face looked softer. His voice had gentler edges. He moved differently, spoke differently, breathed differently. It scared him, and fascinated him, and comforted him all at once. That evening, Mrs. Hamilton found him sitting alone on the small couch, hands folded in his lap, eyes unfocused. "You are quiet today," she said. He didn't look up. "I feel strange." "How strange?" He swallowed.
"Soft, confused, calm."
"And I hate that I do not hate it." He laughed once, the sound shaky. "I do not even sound like myself anymore." Mrs. Hamilton sat beside him, close enough for warmth, but not enough to crowd him. Evan took a shaky breath. "I feel different inside. I do not know when it started. I do not know why it feels right." He looked down at his hands. "What did you do to me?" For the first time since meeting her, Mrs. Hamilton hesitated. "Evan, the vitamins were never vitamins." His head snapped up. "What?" She spoke gently, carefully. "You needed emotional calm. You needed your aggression lowered. You needed a way to break free from the anger you hid behind. The supplements I gave you were technically medical, just not the ones you thought." His throat went dry. "What were they?" "Feminizing hormone shots." The words hit him like a wave. He expected to explode, to shout, to lose control. But the reaction didn't come. Instead, his chest tightened, and tears he didn't expect welled up without warning. Mrs. Hamilton reached out, but did not touch him yet. "Evan, you're safe. Breathe." He shook his head. "You changed me. You changed everything." His voice cracked. "I do not even know who I am anymore." A tear slipped down, then another. He tried wiping them away, but more came until he could no longer hide the tremble in his shoulders. Months of tension, confusion, softness, fear, and quiet longing all crashed at once. Mrs. Hamilton finally placed a hand lightly on his back. "You did not need punishment, Evan. You needed identity. You needed stability. You needed guidance. No one ever gave you structure or care. So you grew around the pain like a shield. I wanted to give you the chance to become who you were always meant to be." Evan covered his face with both hands and cried openly. For the boy he used to be. For the anger he carried for years. For the softness he never allowed himself to feel. When the tears slowed, he dropped his hands and stared at the floor. His voice came out as a whisper. Maybe Eva is who I was meant to be." Mrs. Hamilton nodded softly. "Only you can decide that. But I see peace in you now, for the first time since the day I met you." Evan stared at his reflection across the room. The soft shirt, the smooth skin, the gentle posture he had learned, the faint makeup still resting around his eyes. And for the first time, he didn't see something forced. He saw something awakening, something true. Eva. He didn't fight the name this time. Not even a little. 12 months passed quietly, each day reshaping Evan in ways he never thought possible. The lessons, the clothes, the structure,
The shots.
the gentleness that slowly wrapped around him like a warm blanket. There was no single moment where he changed completely. It happened slowly, softly, like a sunrise that takes its time. By the end of the year, the person who once snarled at strangers on the street was gone. In her place stood someone new, Eva. Her voice had softened without her trying. Her body carried gentle curves she once would have mocked, but now embraced. Her movements were calm, thoughtful, balanced. And her spirit, once sharp as broken glass, felt warm and whole. She was not the angry boy who lived alone with nothing but trouble for company. She was a calmer, kinder woman who understood herself more deeply than she ever had before. Mrs. Hamilton decided the world needed to see that. She organized a small gathering in the garden behind her home. Not a party, not a show, just a quiet evening where people who once feared Evan could meet Eva with fresh eyes. When Eva stepped out of the guest house, wearing a soft, elegant outfit chosen with care, every conversation stopped. The afternoon light caught the gentle shape of her face, her styled hair resting over her shoulders, the natural confidence in the way she held herself. People stared, some shocked, some confused, but no one looked away. Mrs. Hamilton smiled with subtle pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet Eva." Even her voice, when she murmured a greeting, carried a softness that made people lean in instead of step back. Chloe made her way through the crowd until she stood right in front of her. A year ago, she had cried because of him. Today, her eyes filled for a very different reason. "You are safer for society now," she said softly. "But more importantly, you are safer for yourself." Eva felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest. Not the old anger or defensiveness, but something warm and clear. Acceptance. Understanding.
Peace.
"Thank you," she whispered. Throughout the evening, people approached her one by one, not to judge, not to mock, but to ask questions, offer kind words, or simply acknowledge her transformation. Some apologized for assuming she was beyond saving. Others told her she looked confident, beautiful, whole. Later that night, Eva stepped away from the crowd and stood near the garden's edge, where soft lanterns glowed against the gentle breeze. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle inside her. A year ago, she had been lost, hollow, angry at the world, angry at herself. Now she felt something she had never known before. Home. Not a place. Not a building. A sense of belonging inside her own skin. Mrs. Hamilton approached with a calm smile. "How do you feel, Eva?" Eva turned to her, her voice steady. "Like I can finally breathe." Mrs. Hamilton nodded. "Then your journey was worth it." Eva looked back at the guests, then down at her hands, then at the soft reflection of herself in the window. This wasn't a disguise. Not a punishment. Not a lesson. It was her who she was meant to be. She realized she didn't need to hide anymore. She didn't need anger as a shield. She didn't need to pretend. She stepped back toward the gathering, with her shoulders lifted, her heart open, her future hers to shape. Eva was no longer a name given to teach humility. It was the name that fit the identity she chose, the life she embraced. And as she moved forward with quiet confidence, her path unfolded with strength, peace, and a clarity she never thought she would deserve. Eva walked into the world as herself. Whole.
Soft.
Steady. And finally free.